So, Jason, I have something that will boggle your mind from history, because it has boggled mine. I knew what it was, and then I started reading the translations on it, and I cannot believe it's sitting in my room, my studio here. And I brought it because I think it reflects a little bit of what might be happening today, because we don't really know what anybody's intentions are. Bring me up to speed on what's just happened in the last 24 hours with Ukraine and Russia.
It is an eerie scene going on right now in eastern Ukraine. So the two separate, the separatist regions, the two breakaways regions in Ukraine, eastern Ukraine, they have both ordered their citizens to evacuate. They are, and not just to evacuate, they're evacuating into Russia. So right now, as we speak, the sirens are going off, the air raid sirens. I've seen photos of people lined up at banks and ATMs trying to get all their money out before they jump on the evacuation buses.
So this is Ukraine. The Ukrainian people, the Russian Ukrainians, are going to Russia?
Yes.
And what happens to the Ukrainian Ukrainians?
Well, everyone that lives there, most people are the Russian-speaking Ukrainians.
Okay. So these are all being emptied out. And who is saying that you should do that? Russia?
I'm sure Russia gave the little message, but there's the actual statements from the leaders of those separatist regions. They have made televised addresses. So right now, and you can see this is all online. They're sending out text messages to all their citizens, and they're coordinating the evacuation based off the license plate numbers of their cars. So it's organized and it is happening. It's just very, very odd because this is just so telegraphed. And I think that's why I've been so conflicted on it. Russia waited an insane amount of time to let Ukraine get ready for this invasion. And not only that, but to build allies. So yesterday, I'm not sure if you mentioned that story. You did mention that now the UK and Poland have entered into a formal alliance with Ukraine. That is the worst case scenario that I saw for this, because if you start getting NATO members pulled into this in an alliance, that's bad news.
Well, but this is a new alliance because NATO says it's not going to get roped in unless one of their countries. But, I mean, a missile could be lobbed accidentally, and then NATO is involved.
Right. So if something happened, if Russia retaliates, say, to Poland, well, then they've threatened their national defense, and I think NATO would end up having to respond in that case. So there's just so many different ways that this can just go sideways. But I'm with you. I'm not convinced that what the Biden administration says is going to happen will happen.
I never thought. Think of this. I said this yesterday as I'm driving home from work and I'm listening to the news, and friends in the car with me, and I said, "Did you ever think that there would be a time that you weren't sure if you believed our president over Putin? Is there ever a time that you wondered if the Russians were telling the truth and we were lying?" I've never in my life been at a place to where I don't know. I don't trust us. I don't trust our news. I don't trust the White House. I have no idea what to believe in this situation. Do you?
I mean, I hadn't thought about it that way, but it's
I don't know.
It's not. It's even partially because they're kind of stating that they're negotiating here, right? Like they're stating that like we are saying these things to stop Russia from doing them. So I can't even tell if we believe the things that we're saying.
Yeah.
At this point,
the way that they negotiated, so they said that they're negotiating and pursuing all diplomatic efforts to make this stop. Doesn't even hold water to me, because the one thing Putin asked for, right, was, hey, just tell us that. And I'm kind of minimizing this, but just tell us that NATO is not going to accept Ukraine, right?
Well, there was never any talks about that.
It's never been on the table.
Never been on the table.
Ever. So, but if you're the Biden administration, that seems like an easy win for you, because it doesn't hurt you. It doesn't change the way things were going. So just say it. Fine, give him that. But because of his political situation at home, he can't be seen as an appeaser to Russia, because that's the way Russia would spin it. And that's, I'm sure, a lot of other people would spin it that way. But it's a diplomatic win. We're like, fine, here, whatever. We're not going to admit them into NATO. But that was never on the table for them. Why can't you just say that?
They're not going to do it anyway, right? I mean, it's not. Ukraine is not getting this anyway, at least for a long time. And
right. Nobody was even talking
about
it.
Never.
They could reverse themselves after Putin is dead, which is probably the earliest it would happen anyway. But again, you also, as the United States and as NATO, don't want it to be seen as backing down to the demands of a tyrant. And so, I mean, they're all I can understand why they like you. They want Ukraine to be part of this. I think they'd like that to be an outcome eventually.
What really irritates and pisses me off about old alliances, and this is what this goes back to World War I. Like old alliances getting people into trouble and pulling into greater conflicts. I'm not a fan of NATO at the moment. I don't see the point of NATO at the moment.
Here's the thing: these old alliances, World War I alliances, that's what created World War II. Mm-hmm. If you just fight to win and then go home, you can help people rebuild. I mean, America is the only one that does that. You can help people rebuild, but get out.
Right.
Get out. And you can change the world and our tendency to go to war by just minding your own business and getting out. Now, a lot of people will say, you can't do that. Yeah, you really can. It's going to take us 100 years to get back out of it. Of course, it could happen quickly because of a collapse. But I can guarantee you, if there's a collapse, they're going to try to do this in a global sense. They'll try to cobble all of us together, and it will be Russia, China, and their allies against the West. And it's only going to cause more trouble.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it. NATO today is one of the only alliances that the purpose for why it exists doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist anymore.
The Soviet Union.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, that was done. And as to your point, they should have walked away at that point, because then everyone that was in NATO had a reason they had common interests, right? They were going to stop the Soviet Union from advancing global communism all over the world.
Congratulations.
Well, good job. You did your job. But now take a look at Germany. Germany is like they're one of the strongest members of NATO. They're also one of the only ones that are not sending weapons to Ukraine.
Yeah,
they won't do it.
They are in favor of Russia because they are beholden to Russia now.
Money off that pipeline.
Yeah.
And can we point out that Ukraine held 1/3 of the nuclear weapons of the Soviet Union at one point, and they gave them all back?
Third largest stockpile.
Thanks to Bill Clinton, who is a big advocate of, hey, just hand them all back. Don't have a nuclear deterrent to Russia. Why would you ever need that? Well, now we know. This wouldn't be going on if they hadn't done this back in the day, encouraged by the democratic establishment in this country. Ukraine gave all of these nuclear weapons it had back to Russia. They got rid of them.
So I want to remind you about history, that history is always confusing, and you never know what somebody is really doing. I'm going to blow your mind with a piece of history that we just got a few months ago at the Mercury One Museum. It is incredible, and it goes to what's happening right now. We do that in just a second. When everybody in the world was saying they're not going to go into Poland, the Germans, they're not going to go into Poland. And everybody's working on peace deals. In a speech given to the commanders of the German army August 22nd, which was a few days before the original planned attack for Hitler, he said, our strength consists in our speed and in our brutality. Genghis Khan led millions of women and children to slaughter with a premeditation and a happy heart. History sees him solely as a founder of a state. It's a matter of indifference to me what a weak Western Europe civilization will say about me. I have issued a command, and I'll have anyone who utters but one word of criticism executed by a firing squad. Our aim in war does not consist in reaching a certain line, but in the physical destruction of the enemy. Accordingly, I have placed my Death Head formation, special SS units, in the readiness for the present only in the East, with orders for them to send to death mercilessly and without compassion men, women, and children of the Polish derivation and language. Only thus shall we gain the living space in which we need, who, after all, speaks today of the annihilation of the Armenians. Only one thing is true. A new situation has now been created. Poland will be depopulated and then settled by the Germans. My pact with Poland, after all, was only intended to gain time. What I have here was originally published about 2 months before that speech was given. Remember, they're doing peace accords and everything else. These are the final plans given to the German commanders. These are all of the maps. If you're watching the Blaze TV, you'll see them. These are all of the maps of Poland, where they're going, how they're going to get there. And this is the battle plan given to the commanders. And I want to read a couple of things translated in German. There's a box in red on the front. It says, "This is a secret item within the meaning of Section 88, Reich Criminal Code. Misuse will be punished according to provisions of this law unless other state provisions come into question." So firing squad, you would be dead immediately. Then under that is another warning. It says secret military geographical description of Poland with individual information for reference, completed July 1st, 1939.
Wow.
So almost 2 months before you hear that speech, and then they postpone it again till September. The plans were already drawn to liquidate Poland. So you're in a time period, once again, where how do you tell the truth? How do you know what the truth is? Those who negotiated with Hitler, I think they were hoping that that was the truth. I'm guessing that most of them knew it probably wasn't. Separate what you know to be true from what you hope to be true. Because if you just go on hopes and you dismiss the actual words of people who are threatening to do crazy things, you will most times be mistaken, and it won't end well. So let's know what the truth is and not what we hope to be true. Pretty amazing, isn't it?
It's wild.
These are the actual instructions, along with the pictures of all the bridges that they need to blow up, all of the instructions to the commanding generals that went into Poland.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, I
don't even know how to. I know. I was shocked when we got this in auction. I couldn't believe we have this. We also have the original Operation Bigot plan. You know what that was? Do you know what that was? Operation Bigot. It is D-Day. And we have the plans from Bigot, and there's a second name too. We have the and some of them are hand annotated from the D-Day invasion. I mean, I just want to do. I at one point I think we should just do an open history of just World War II. Mm-hmm. It's amazing what artifacts you can still find and preserve. I'm on a new push personally to acquire things that cannot be replaced. We have documents and other things that I just worry that someday, 100 years from now, and the robots have taken over. They're Marxist robots, and so they would destroy all of our history. Our history has to be preserved. Your history has to be preserved. If you're not writing a diary, please, if you can, start one. Just make notes of what's happening every day. That will be used by historians. I've read diaries of people in Germany, and it's fascinating to read them because you'll see things that you don't see in the newspapers. One of the things that really stuck out to me was we didn't know this word hyperinflation just last week. Now it's the only word anyone is talking about. History's incredible. Knowing history and knowing battle plans, where do you think this goes? Is this going this weekend, if it goes?
I think that it could. So knowing history, the last time something like this happened with Russia was Georgia 2008. I want to say.
And they told people to evacuate?
They told the people evacuated just as they did now. They are now. Of course, there was tensions just as it is now. They evacuated their people back into Russia, and then the invasion happened, I think, 4 days afterwards, 3 to 4 days later. So this does kind of go to that playbook. But again, this is so telegraphed that it's almost like they're saying, look what's going to happen, as kind of like an aggressive diplomatic move.
Is there a chance they take just two sectors and then it's over without any bloodshed?
That's the most likely thing.
I do too.
I mean, I don't think they're going to go all the way to Kyiv and take over the entire country. I really hope they don't.
They are formed to do that. So they're in Belarus to go towards Kyiv. Yep, all sides. But again, that seems to me more likely as if this escalates.
Just give us these territories and we'll leave you alone.
Which they basically already have.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a possibility this could end without a shot fired.
That would be fantastic. That would be fantastic.
Not for Ukraine, though.
No, not for Ukraine.
It's better that the shots aren't fired, obviously, but just losing multiple regions of their country. This is Russia is violating all sorts of previous agreements they've made with Ukraine on this.
No, and
among other things.
And I agree with that. And it's horrible to lose part of your country.
Yeah.
And I would fight if it was happening in our country. And I will pray for the Ukrainians that God is with them.